Imagine this. You've got the picture-perfect life, the home, the family, everything. And yet, you have a distinct feeling that something is missing. And you sense that it is a burning creative urge. But in your day-to-day life, there is just no inspiration to feed that creativity. So what do you do? For years, Paula Modersohn-Becker lived inside that very feeling. Until 1906, when she left her whole life behind to finally find out where her art would lead her. What followed was one single year of work that made her one of the most important women artists of the early 20th century. So let's have a look at how Paula fed her creativity, and if it really takes an action that radical to find your creative calling. These two portraits were made by the same artist, only 8 years apart. The first shows an elderly peasant woman in profile, and Paula Becker painted it when she was in her early 20s. It's careful and filled with respect for its subject. The second also shows an elderly peasant woman in profile, but everything else has changed completely. Paula has abandoned this subtle beauty and her more realistic style for profound emotional expression. And here you can see exactly why Paula Modersohn-Becker is known as one of the great icons of German Expressionism to this day. So how did Paula find her creativity and her true artistic calling that is so clearly visible in the second painting? The answer can be found, as so often during that time, in Paris. In 1900, years before her artistic emancipation, Paula is 24 years old and she goes to Paris for the very first time. One day, she finds a stack of canvases leaning against the wall of a tiny gallery. Still lifes of apples on a table by a then little-known painter named Paul Cézanne. Cézanne constructs these apples out of bold patches of color until they somehow feel more solid and true than any polished detail could ever make them. He was searching for the simplest forms that lie beneath all things in nature. And Paula, she never forgot those paintings. Cézanne, she later wrote, was an artist who affected her like a thunderstorm, like some great event. After her stay in Paris, she went back home to Germany and got married. But 3 years after that initial trip, she returned to visit the Louvre. There she discovered the 2,000-year-old mummy portraits of ancient Egypt. Their eyes are large and exaggerated, but at the same time also calm, honest, and very direct. During yet another visit, she found herself standing in front of the paintings of Paul Gauguin. And he was able to create whole worlds with just a few big and basically flat shapes. There's another painting Paula made right in the middle of those years. Once more, she tackled the motive of an elderly peasant woman. Looking at all three side by side, you can really see the progression with each trip. Bit by bit, the details disappear, while the shapes grow bigger and bolder. Paris was undoubtedly feeding Paula's insatiable creative spirit so much. So naturally, this question arises. If a few weeks in Paris could do so much for her art, what happens when a few weeks stop being enough? Okay, now let's look at the life Paula keeps returning to between these life-altering forays to France. She was living in Worpswede, a renowned artist colony amongst the Moors of northern Germany. Painters settled out there to get away from the busy city life, and Paula was married to one of the most respected painters of the community, Otto Modersohn. He was a kind man who admired and respected her. She had a home with a studio of her own and a young stepdaughter that she loved deeply. For a woman around 1900 who wanted to be a painter herself, it was quite hard to imagine any better circumstances. But listen to what she wrote during the very same year she got married. It is good to break free from circumstances that take away your air. And these words already hinted at what was to come. Because there was one obvious problem. The things Paula painted didn't look like Worpswede at all. The community she was a part of had a very particular and distinct way of seeing the world. Let's look at the work of her teacher, Fritz Mackensen, for example. Here, he painted a sentimental scene of a peasant mother nursing her baby. Like a Madonna of the Moor, she is bathed in soft light, appearing almost holy. By contrast, here's Paula's nursing mother. You can see no halo, nor evening glow. This is just a body doing what bodies do, and it is composed of simple shapes. The artists in the colony wanted to infuse their paintings with a mood, but Paula, influenced by all her trips to Paris, was after the simplest forms underneath it all. And Worpswede couldn't understand her. Even her husband Otto, who admired her greatly, wrote in his diary that he thought this new direction she was taking was a mistake. Angular, ugly, bizarre, and wooden were just some of the words he used. Now what do you do when even the people who love you most can't see what you're reaching for? In the end, Paula decided to leave the life she knew behind. Only a couple of days after her 30th birthday, she packed all her belongings and bought a one-way ticket to Paris. This time, there was no coming back. She walked away from her family, her home, her whole life, to finally give her creativity what it needed. Just days before, she wrote in a letter to her good friend, the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. And now, I don't know how to sign my name. I'm not Modersohn and I'm not Paula Becker anymore. I'm me, and I hope to become that more and more. So what makes a person abandon their perfectly good life to follow their creativity? In Paula's case, it wasn't a sudden impulse. There were 6 years of evidence, including 3 trips, after each of which her art made huge leaps forward. Creativity gets fed in countless different ways. Some people need silence and routine. Some spend a lifetime returning to one and the same motive. Paula needed new images, new ways of seeing, and Worpswede had no more to offer. Instead, Paris delivered. The months that followed were like an artistic explosion. It was the most productive year of her life. Almost everything the world remembers her for came out of this one single year. Around that time, she also met the sculptor Bernhard Hödtger. He was already successful, well-connected, and the first artist of real standing who looked at her work and simply understood it. He saw exactly what she was after. So when he stood in front of her paintings, absolutely stunned, and told her so, it changed everything for her. She later wrote to him, "You have given me the most wonderful thing. You have given me myself." There's one painting from that period which exemplifies her evolution very clearly. Here we see a pregnant woman standing before us. She's naked above the waist, a string of amber beads around her neck. Her head is slightly tilted, her gaze completely calm. It's a self-portrait, and as far as we know, the very first time in all of art history that a female artist painted herself in the nude. I mean, think about that. There's an inscription she added to the canvas. "I painted this at age 30 on my 6th wedding day." Although she had left that marriage month before. Also, Paula wasn't pregnant. The belly was just a fantasy. And she didn't sign it Modersohn. She signed it with the initials of her maiden name. PB, Paula Becker. And you can find all the elements Paula fed her creativity with right in that picture. The calm, simple planes, that's Cézanne. The big, direct eyes, those are from the Egyptian mummy portraits. And the way she chose to show herself, bare-shouldered with just a simple cloth around her hips, that's Gauguin. And what comes out of it is a visual language entirely of her own. So modern, so far ahead of its time, that it would take other German painters decades to catch up with the vision of this one woman working alone in a little studio in Paris. Unfortunately, real life is more complicated than a clean escape. And I don't want to stop at an unrealistic fairy tale ending, because that just isn't how the story ends. After her year in Paris, Paula went back to her husband, because it was simply the only way she could afford to keep painting financially. You might call that defeat. Knowing how little choice she had as a woman at that time, it's hard not to. Or you could see it in the light of the same relentless focus she had all along. Everything, even this, ultimately served her greater purpose, her creativity and her work. Back in Worpswede, she gave birth to a daughter, fulfilling another lifelong dream. But only days later, Paula died of a sudden embolism. She was only 31 years old. As her last words, she proclaimed, "What a pity," and that is very true. The paintings from her year in Paris are now the works that the world remembers her by. Today, Paula Modersohn-Becker is celebrated as a pioneer of Expressionism. And in Bremen, an entire museum was built in her memory. The first museum in the world dedicated entirely to a female painter. What has stuck with me is how uncompromising Paula was. She bet everything on her creativity, and it's hard not to admire that. It's also hard not to ask myself, would I need that kind of radical mindset to really live out my creativity? But Paula knew exactly what she was doing. She tested life in Paris 3 times before taking that radical leap. And in the end, maybe she found that she needed a bit of both, freedom and belonging. So no, perhaps Paula's story doesn't require you to leave everything behind, but it does ask you a much more pragmatic question. What feeds your creativity? What are the images, the places, and the encounters your everyday life doesn't provide? And how do you start giving your creativity exactly that? Paula's answer started small. A train ticket with a return, a museum, and a small gallery full of strange apples.